Welcome to Ray-ality TV. I'm Raymond Bakari. The special election to replace Congressman David Cicilline in Rhode Island's 1st Congressional District is set to take place later on this year. Several candidates have already started to announce that they are going to run for this seat in the Democratic primary, one of those candidates being Alan Waters. Alan, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's always good to see you. Happy Friday.
Likewise, Alan, happy Friday, and it's great to have you back on. We had you on during the last election cycle when you were running for this seat. Why do you want to represent Rhode Island in Congress?
Well, I'll tell you, for me, it's always been a calling. I believe our country's in trouble. We're too polarized. I believe the elites on both sides of the aisle have this country in a mess. I mean, both the Republicans and the Democrats, we're up to $31.6 trillion and still going up. I haven't checked it in a week. That's not good. Plus, I'm a man, I consider me a classical liberal. And, I just want to make sure that whether you're left or whether you're hard right, I just want to make sure that everybody's liberty to enjoy America is intact.
As I prefaced in that first question, you did run for the seat in 2022. You were going to initially run for U.S. Senate in 2024, but then around the time when Congressman Cicilline announced he's stepping down, you then decided to switch to this race. What made you want to switch over to this race and run for the seat again?
Well, I still have my signs. Just joking. And but most importantly is that it's a great opportunity for me to continue to build my brand. And now as a conservative Democrat, I'm not hiding from the fact that I'm a conservative Black Democrat. But you know what? The Democratic Party has a lot of moderate to conservative African Americans and other people that are close to us that just don't move over. They're not Republicans. They're not attracted to it for whatever the reason is. That's a history lesson in itself. So although I've been a Republican, if anyone wants to accuse me of anything, accuse me of being an independent, because I'm naturally independent. I'm not one that necessarily follows a party ideology, a party line all the way. I think for myself, and I will think for my constituents. And that's good because we need someone that's not necessarily just going to do what a party tells them to do without at least thinking about it and seeing how it affects the people back home.
Before we do address your switch in political affiliations, it's going to be a packed primary. There's already several candidates who have filed alongside yourself: Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos, State Senator Sandra Cano, State Representative Nathan Baya, and I believe Makeda Sebastiano Barnes is how you pronounce that, the other person who's filed his name. How likely do you see yourself winning this primary?
I think I'm in a great spot, and the reason is this: as a we've talked about me labeling myself a Rhode Island Blue Dog Democrat. That's a great place for moderate to conservative Democrats to belong to because we believe in things such as common sense solutions. We think of things such as traditional American values. We also think about things such as fiscal responsibility. And currently, Congress, again, on both sides of the aisle, is not fiscally responsible at all. So we need an adult in the room. And so while everyone else so far is lined up to, I like to use the term, out-progressive each other, I'm the voice of common sense, especially to traditional Democrats. What does that mean? The party may have moved, but there's still a lot of Democrats that are Truman Democrats, Kennedy Democrats, even Bill Clinton Democrats. And those are the type of people that I want to say, if you want to bring the Democratic Party back to the center, back to its core of where it used to be, then I'm one of the best Democrats for Democrats to vote for, but also the independents that would be attracted to my message. And also a lot of Republicans, they say if Joe Manchin decides to run for president, he would attract certainly some of those Republicans who might be tired of Donald Trump. I'm not saying a negative about Donald Trump. They just personally might be tired with his brand. And those people are in Rhode Island. They might say, you know what? We need to have someone that at least we can have at least half a loaf than no loaf at all.
So now looking at your political affiliation, during the last election cycle, you were the Republican nominee against David Cicilline in the first congressional district. And
Yes,
previous elections, you ran in 2020 as a Republican against Senator Reid, and then I believe
yes.
you were an independent and a Republican at one point in Massachusetts elections. So why switch to a Democrat?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, most of my adult life, I was an independent, working, family man, not really involved in politics. I wouldn't consider myself a political science or a big fan of the game. Again, I'm on mission. I just want to help my fellow Americans to hopefully better this country. So that's important to me. But I joined the Republican Party in Massachusetts, September 2014, Cape Cod Republican Club. I'm a native Rhode Islander, born and raised in Providence, raised a family in East Providence, and somehow I ended up in Mashpee on Cape Cod. So from my home there, I joined the party. And that's where I ran for State Senate, Cape and Islands District 2014. They didn't have anybody running, just like here in Rhode Island. They didn't have anyone running. I had no experience, but I'm an enthusiastic, want to help guy. And I said, I'll help, I'll do it. But there was someone running. I lost in the primary. I also went out against Elizabeth Warren in 2017, but more Republicans with more depth, more name brand, more money. They ran, and I knew I wasn't going to get on the ballot. Fast forward to right now. You know, when I ran against Senior Senator Jack Reed, when I ran against U.S. Representative David Cicilline, against Jack Reed, I wrote to every U.S. senator. I wrote to the RNC. I wrote to the president. And when I was running against Cicilline, I wrote to every state just to let them know, because maybe there's someone out there that says, you know what, this guy's running against David Cicilline. He was the 2021 Trump impeachment manager. Certainly, I'm an advocate for gun control, or not gun control, for A2. I believe in our God-given right to protect ourselves and our family under the Second Amendment. I have a license to carry a firearm in 2 states. So I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk in terms of, I would want people listening to this that, if you got somebody that passes a federal background check in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, at least you got that filter going on. Like, who is this guy and why does he want to be our next congressman? But you know what? The Republican Party, the National Republican Party, they never acknowledged me. They have these formulas in their head, you're not raising enough money, whatever it is. But especially against David Cicilline, and especially because they were in town, Rhode Island 45, they hardly come around, but because of Alan Funk running against Seth Magaziner, they were here and money was being spent. And they never said, but over in the first congressional district, we have a nice family man, solid guy, Providence guy, son of a Providence police officer, whatever they want to say. And you know what? People would have said, oh, let me look a little closer. But they were close-lipped. And after the race, I said, well, you know what? I understand if you don't raise the money, they may not, get, like they call them, the young guns and whatever. But if you can't say your man's name, that's a problem. So I decided I was either going to hang it up. I ran enough. I look in the mirror, no matter what my detractors might say. I never intended to be a perennial. I'm not running to lose. I'm not running to just see myself up on stage. I'm running to win for the American people. But I decided that, you know what, in Providence, my hometown, 4th generation, my people were in Providence in the end of the 1800s. My grandma, my father's mother was born here in 1903. What's the point I want to make? The point is, we still in Providence vote 95% Democrat. And there's a lot of people that know my name, that know my family, that know we're good people, and I'm a good man. And now as a Democrat, even if I'm a moderate Democrat, a conservative type Democrat, the answer is they're going to vote for me. And they might vote for me for the people who came here after my family.
Addressing part of that answer where you talk about how the federal Republican Party didn't really give you a lot of resources, I do remember Tommy Hicks acknowledging your name and that you were running against Cicilline at the convention where they were nominating the candidates, the slated candidates for governor, CD1, CD2, lieutenant governor, etc.
Yes,
But
I
the
remember
this
that too. I looked the
exactly,
man in his eye and I
but
said, Tommy, are you going to say my name? And
but the
he said, Alan, he's going to say my name. But he may have said the name then, but they never said it again. The party could have done more. They decided not to. And no, looking at hindsight, you know, the, the Republican Party has used a lot of excuses of why the rave didn't come. Oh, there's a lot of unqualified candidates. Come on. Somebody has a good model. You could help a little bit and see, but no, they don't. They just and so whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican, uh, they want you to raise enough money, a lot of money, because you need that money to advertise. But it's all this thing because everybody gets to dip their beak in the money, until you're broke. And so therefore, that's also an attraction. But we're only 40 by 50 miles. And if I don't have millions, there's a number out there for me. But in order to get my name from Woonsocket down to Newport and Jamestown, I think we can do it. And plus, people have seen my name on the ballot in 2020. They've seen my name. Who is this guy? Why does he keep showing up? Now that I'm in town, there are people that would not have supported me as a Republican, but they're saying, you know what, Al, we like you. And now that you're a Democrat, it's just easier. And so that's what's going on.
And finishing up my thought, when it comes to the argument that the federal Republican Party didn't give resources, the seat is a very, very blue seat, and Congressman Cicilline was very popular in that district. The seat voted for President Biden by 20-something points, I believe, in 2020. So how much of a difference would the federal resources have made, in your opinion?
This is what I want. I do understand some of the parameters. It's not like they give you a piece of paper. It's not like they send you an email. It's not like you go to a book. It's a lot of it is word of mouth. But it really came down to what I call RESPECT, respect. And if you can't say a man's name who's putting himself on the front line for 2 federal races, and you can't say his name, you can't say the name Alan Waters, then the answer is you don't want me. I understand. I've got to move on because I've got a country to save, and I got a country that I helped to save. And this time I have a shot. I'm not mad at the Republicans. As a Blue Dog Democrat, I'm going to join the Blue Dog Coalition in the House of Representatives, and I'm going to cross over, especially on things that really matter, and work with the Republicans closely, because it's not about Democrats, it's not about Republicans, it's about America. And if they got something that's worthwhile, I'm going to be there with them so that we can move this country forward.
Speaking of moving forward, let's move forward onto some policies. You're very big on fiscal responsibility as president in both of your policy sections for the 2020 Senate run and the 2022 CD1 run, and you've talked about it quite often in a couple of those answers and on Twitter recently. What policies would you support to address the $30 trillion national debt?
Well, one of the things, very quickly, because I know we have time, and I sometimes I talk in larger bites. I believe in term limits. One of the things is we got to get these people out of here because it's about money, it's about power, but it's not about us. Because if it was about us, they wouldn't run the debt up like they're doing. So it's about something else, but it's not about the people in Rhode Island. It's not about the Republicans and Democrats or the independents in Rhode Island, and that's part one. I now it's almost a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, maybe 4. I spoke at a House Rhode Island House meeting on the Convention of States. And I believe in that because we need to be able to take America back, almost like federalism, because the power, the swamp that Trump used to call, it's so big and it continues to grow and it sucks up our resources. And they're doing things that, for instance, our congressmen and our senators should be voting on, even such things as what's going on with Janet Yellen. They're making guarantees that that we should be voting on our representatives in Congress. And so it's those type of things that I look at, but I support a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. I just know this is that when the Democrats are spending with their tax and spend and borrow policies, there's some things that make sense for the people, and there's other things, it's just about you're out of control. And I want to be that Democrat that says, you know what? Tell us why. Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to run that debt up? Why can't we have a balanced budget? Why can't we do that? I'll vote for it if you tell me what those reasons are. And the same thing with the Republicans. One of the things that the problem with the Republican Party is, a lot of Republicans are gutless. They're gutless. They don't do what they're supposed to do, what Republicans are supposed to stand for. And so we have a mess. Oh, next thing you know, they're just borrowing more money. You know why? Because they like to feed at the same trough as the Democrats to pass that money around back home. And we're going to go over the cliff with the expenses. So those are the type of things that I think about. And I think if you start to talk about, my ideology versus progressives and things, I'll talk more about that as well.
Continuing the focus on the debt and expenditures and things of that nature, we're starting to hear talks about Social Security and Medicare's future. The Democrats often say that the Republicans want to cut it. There are some Republicans vocal about not wanting to cut it, but then there are some that are saying that it should at least be brought into the discussion or talked about a little bit more. Where do you stand on this overall topic of Social Security and Medicare's fate?
My fellow Democrats have to stop telling those lies. They lie. I was on stage with David Cicilline when I was a Republican, and he lies. Listen, I don't know how many Republicans are on Social Security, but some of those people that still have moms and dads and they're not collecting it yet, no one wants to cut anybody's Social Security. I'm on Social Security. I've been on Social Security a little while right now and my Medicare. But here's the problem. The trust fund or the trust is going to go out of money for a lot of reasons. We're living longer. People are healthier. Somehow there's not maybe enough people working and putting into the system, whatever the complexity is. But just as we have done in the past, we've raised what we call the full retirement age for Social Security. We may have to do those things again. So you do have to tweak it in order for it to be solvent. And instead of using these political sound bites just to get some points against the Republicans, that's wrong. We need to sit down with the Republicans and fix this problem so everybody in America who is depending on this, since, I know a lot of folks, especially on the conservative side, like to talk about socialism. I'm against socialism myself, but we do have these vast social programs in a free market society, and we got to make sure that they're solvent. And that's one of the things that I will work on. Instead of tossing stones, what can we do to make this work so people don't miss a check?
You mentioned term limits 2 answers ago. Speaking of those, how many would you favor?
Well, you know what? Different people have different ideas of how long a career is, but for now, I'll say 40 years, right? So if you're a U.S. Senator and you're in there for 2 terms or 12 years, it's time for you to go home, and it's like, think of a blue state. Everybody has to wait for Jack Reed to decide to retire. Everybody's got to wait for someone like Sheldon Whitehouse, and I'm certainly a fan, not a great student of people like Frederick Douglass, but power has to be taken. You have to, that's hard because they got a lot of money, they got a lot of power. All these people are great. Well, the answer is they do some fine things, but you know what? At some point, you're not necessarily doing your best for the people who are voting for you in your district and in your state because you ran out of ideas. You're holding a spot, but there are other. In a blue state, there are other fine Democrats, young men and women who probably need to have a shot at that and represent. And there's plenty of Republicans who want to be able to compete against them, and they finally take the seat. But they're in the way, just like when we had, the representative has just stepped down, and David's Cicilline's moving on. But fresh ideas, fresh blood, a change, and that's what I represent. Versus kind of like the same old Democratic Republican establishment in Rhode Island. I look at myself as a breath of fresh air, whether or not the people buy it or not. I know I am when I look in the mirror because when you talk about my values, when you talk about the things that I believe in, things I want to get done, those are the things that I think appeal to there's an old term from decades ago called the silent majority. They're still there, but what happens is the people that aren't so silent are the people that are dragging this country over the cliff and dragging the party over the cliff. So I want to say that Alan Waters is an opportunity to save the Democratic Party. Because one of the things I say, and this is what I believe, if we lose the Democratic Party, we lose America. It's time to bring us back to the center.
So you said 12 years for the Senate. That would be 2 terms since there's 6 years.
Yeah,
The House
and
is...
5 or 6 terms for the House of Representatives, the U.S. Representative.
Got it. Sometimes critics will often say that term limits, quote, empowers lobbyists, or they'll even say we have term limits, citing that they're called elections, even though that's the term length.
Mm-hmm.
What would your response be to those talking points you often hear from the critics?
Well, one of the things that I also believe in is I believe that we should reverse Citizens United. Now, sometimes that sounds like a very liberal kind of leftist thing, but you know what? In my heart and in my mind, could you imagine a world where the corporate and PAC contributions, maybe even some of the super PAC, were limited so that people would actually have to really hear what their representatives and what their senators are saying. So we need to get the big money out of politics. And I certainly would vote for that if it ever came to a vote. But I certainly believe in something like a convention of states where the states say, to keep it safe when you're opening it up, let's talk about things such as term limits. Let's talk about things such as fiscal responsibility. Let's talk about things so that these bureaucrats who have quasi-legislative power are corralled because they're doing things to America that our people that we send to Washington aren't voting on.
So you think those two things would, alongside term limits, would combat those criticisms of term limits?
Absolutely. I'm thinking of a whole package of what we could do to make America better, because we always have the potential. And this country is built on these Judeo-Christian principles. It is. There's the values that the people, our founders, have built that on. And as a classical liberal, I believe in things such as real liberty. You see, the problem with some of the people on the left and the radical left is they want to take our liberty away. They want to tell us what they want to do. But what if I don't want to do it? Why do I have to listen to that? And then we learned, of course, over the pandemic in these elections, that in social media and the media world, with the censorship, with the quasi-censorship, we're learning about these dark relationships with the FBI and other police organizations within the United States of America. We need to be able to curb those things because we're losing our liberty. And the problem is that you and I might be connected, but the person who's just trying to feed their family, that's just trying to get along, maybe they just want to watch their game shows. I need to take care of those people. And so do you in the work that you do. But just think, people your age, a little bit older, they literally were on control of the button of the information that was in this country. And if they don't believe in liberty, if they don't believe in free market capitalism, if they don't believe in things such as limited government, less taxation, if they don't even believe in a strong national defense or things such as the Second Amendment, we're tilting in a place where our nation is not going to be the way that it was designed. It's going to be redesigned, and it's not going to be good, because I'll leave it at one last thing, because you get these little snippets of information. If you have students on college campuses that protest ideas versus listen to ideas and then either counter those ideas or politely, if they feel that information that is not the information that they enjoy is violent or harmful to their ears, then the short answer is, I'm getting older, but we're going to lose it because, what good is a fine university if you can't listen to information and communication in a civil manner?
Shifting gears just a little bit, though, a recent topic in Congress that had created quite a debate was a bill to block Washington D.C.'s crime revision bill. The bill passed to block those revisions. It passed with bipartisan support. President Biden recently signed it, but those in your new party were kind of torn about it. How would you have voted on that bill if you were in Congress?
Oh, I just believe that um, for me, I look at it as a Black American. I live in Providence. We're talking about Washington, D.C., but most importantly is that poor people, minorities, and others, we need law and order. We need to have a world where there are consequences for bad actions. And some of these politicians, some of these people who are district attorneys and others who are literally putting criminals back on the street to torment the people, quite frankly, the people in Washington, D.C., in what we used to call back in my day, the chocolate city, the short answer is they don't love Black people. They hate Black people. And I'll tell you why they hate Black people, because if you're going to make it an unsafe environment in a city that's still minority majority, because you just want to let criminals and miscreants and ne'er-do-wells just have their way, that's not good. So I want to make sure that everyone in America, from the inner city to the countryside, is safe. So I believe in law enforcement, but they have to be professional, well-trained, and very professional. And people who aren't should call the task and let the system work to get these people out so that they're not harming people. But most people, like I like the Providence Police, they're out there doing their job for the people, and it's a thankless job. And my basically qualification is I'm the son of a former Providence policeman, the first man of color on a motorcycle. So I grew up in a law and order household, and I knew what the limitations were for my behavior when I was out in public as a young man. And so these are the type of things that we have to instill on our community. And we can't do that if we have politicians and others trying to tear away at what's so important to the fabric of a well-oiled society.
So you would have voted for the bill to block DC's criminal code revisions?
Yes.
Got it. Gonna do a quick couple lightning round questions, shorter form, one sentence at the most. Would you support
Yes.
or oppose a federal assault weapons ban?
I would oppose it because we don't have assault weapons. We have semi-automatic rifles, and an assault weapon is a automatic weapon used in combat. We've always had semi-automatics. They may be fierce looking. They may, have this certain machismo look to them, but you still only can fire one round per one trigger pull. And I don't believe that we already had, that's right, lightning rounds. We already had laws against this, and they really didn't work. They didn't stop the violence. So don't take it away.
Pro-life or pro-choice?
I am pro-life qualified. I'm personally pro-life. Rhode Island has, it's a state that women can have abortions. I believe that abortion should be safe, but rare. So let's fight for rare, as in try to reduce unwanted pregnancies.
In terms of banning members of Congress from trading stocks, would you support or oppose that idea?
Well, if you look up Sheldon Whitehouse, Sheldon has did a little insider trading in his days, and I think that people in Congress should be no more privileged than us, and they should have strict laws, and they should have penalties when they use that information at all to profit for themselves. So I'm against insider trading, and we need strong laws against it.
So you're for a ban on them from trading stocks?
Yes.
Got it. Final question on the non-political side. So you can elaborate on this one in terms of the answer. Do you have any hobbies?
The answer is what I like to do is just kind of a health hobby. I run. I'm 67 years old. I like to still run 4 or 5 miles 3 times a week, and that's what I do the most. My rest of my hobby is the fact that I still have 3 teenagers, and my life is still family full, and so don't have any specific hobbies other than living well and enjoying.
I think that's a good place to end things. That was all the questions I had written down. Alan, I want to thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Always a pleasure to be here, and thanks.
Absolutely, anytime. And thank you for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV. If you want to see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel, please click the subscribe button down below and the post notification bell icon to the right of it. I'm Raymond Bakari, and I'll see you next time.